Hey, friends. Sunday, 24th September, 3 minutes past the hour, for which I apologize. I was caught in the back room speaking with guests. Very happy to be back here in Mexico at the newer sanctuary base in Laguna Bacalar. For those of you following me on social media, you will know that I came from Mexico City, and prior to that was in the United States. I think I passed through about 12 cities in 18 days, something like that. A lot of meetings, a lot of interesting meetings. One of the most interesting things I encountered in recent days was handling a bunch of alien mummies, artifacts, skulls, and what have you. I've got a couple of pictures here that I think I'm possibly allowed to put up. Let me just see if I can find them. Excuse me 1 second. I'm half blind here. Okay, boom. Yeah. This here is one of the X-rays. The curious thing here with this particular skeleton, I don't think the creature could have been taller than 20 inches. But it's these metal bands seemingly holding the skeleton together under X-ray. Curious to know if any of my guests have any ideas on this. But it was very, very interesting indeed, I can tell you. I've taken a lot of film footage and a lot of slides, images, but I'm not allowed to at this stage show anything more than I've just done, alas. So you'll have to forgive me being a tease. Just to say that the focus of this broadcast today is ET disclosure, alien disclosure, connected into the great revelation, which clearly is upon the human race, not if you pay any attention to CNN or MSNBC or the BBC or any of these other fetid corridors of corrupted information, and eternal shame and damnation on those folks within those arcane apparatuses that continue to propagate lies and deceptions, and then worse, turn their establishment canon onto good people of the world, truth merchants and disclosure merchants, some of whom I have on the show today. So off-world and ET disclosure is happening all over the world. And from congressional hearings in the United States to findings, as I just mentioned, of alien artifacts in Mexico and elsewhere. Actually, the ones that you saw stemmed from Peru, incidentally. It's time to learn the true history of our planet, our solar system, and the cosmos, the existence of our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters, and perhaps most importantly, to learn about the hidden and repressed healing and propulsion technologies available here and now, and by best accounts have been available for many long decades, sequestered in the basement of the Smithsonian Institute, the British Museum, the Vatican complex, and of course under the evil anvil of the Midnight Masons and those sons of bitches who are now, thankfully, passing over. This world is emerging into a new custodianship, friends. You are the custodians. I am the custodian. There is no longer galactic or this is no longer the subject matter of kind of zany fringe podcasts. It's news. It's right here. It's right now. And we're bringing you the most highly respected and knowledgeable voices in the field, just so you know. This is a pretty special broadcast today. As extravagant as it may seem, there is a well-documented and often irrefutable proof of the experiences shared by these world-renowned speakers. Well understood, of course, by many in the military and intelligence establishment and those in the government basement. Just don't expect, as I said earlier, to see it on mainstream media quite yet. Not in the way that you're going to be hearing about it today. The remarkable souls on this panel right now that I'm bringing up have so much valuable information to share that we've slotted an hour for this panel. I'll give you a quick introduction and have a couple of questions for each speaker, but otherwise I just want them to expand and expound at will. Danny Henderson, who I was with in in Las Vegas very recently at the big jamboree that we did in front of, I think, 7,000 evangelical Christians wielding guns and Bibles. What a delight that was, I have to say. I'm very happy that Danny is joining me today. I'm going to bring her on momentarily just to say hi. Danny, great to see you.
Hi there, Sacha. Lovely to see you, be with you, and hear of you speaking of the true history of our planet and our solar system. It's time, friend, as we know.
Isn't it just? And, you're the host of the Galactic and Spiritual Informers Conference, which is next month, hosting our 3 prime panelists coming on now. Just give me a 30-second or 1-minute overview of the conference.
The conference is a gathering of personnel, people, humans who've had literal physical, mental, and emotional one-to-one interaction with beings from other planets, Pleiadians, extraterrestrials, hybrids, all of them. 2 of them that are coming on the panel now were taken by the Earth military. People have got to understand the Earth military are in cahoots with governments. They've created programs behind the scenes. They've taken children. They put them into torture programs in the name of medication, medicine, and understanding consciousness. It goes back to the time of Hitler, as you showed there, all these different programs that just went underground, that never went anywhere. The people at the conference stand on stage giving the true history of their physical experiences, their knowledge from upstairs off planet. We're talking Mars colony, we're talking Ceres colony, we're talking lunar command. It is not a joke. There are no tinfoil hat wearing people. They were always telling the truth. And the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, this conference happening in Orlando, Florida on October 20th, 21st, and 22nd is the place to be on this planet to hear uncensored truth.
Very good. Well, as it so happens, there's nothing wrong with wearing a tinfoil hat. By best accounts, it's a very sensible thing to do. To remediate against weaponized EMFs, one imagines, and also probably acting as some kind of a dielectric antenna to be able to transcode all this insanity of the cosmos. Look, Danny, thanks very much indeed. I'm just going to introduce the rest of our panel. Dr. Michael SALLA, author of the Secret Space Program's book series, and a pioneer and world leader in the field of exopolitics and understanding covert operations of Space Force and Earth Alliance. And Dr. SALLA's historical work is referenced as the most important historical and galactic information of our time. He is a former professor in political science, and I'm delighted to have made his acquaintance fairly recently. Michael, very happy to have you today on Arise.
Thank you, Sacha. It really is a fascinating time, and I'm very glad you're educating your audience about what's happening with UFOs, ET life. It really is amazing just how quickly the disclosures are coming, and it's just not the public disclosures we're witnessing through researchers, witnesses, insiders. We're seeing an official process that's never been witnessed before that marks a kind of 180 turnaround by officials that are now rushing to make statements and position themselves on the UAP or the UFO issue, and it's because they know something is coming, and they're just getting themselves ready for something that can't be stopped, and that which is coming is this reconnection and this kind of rising consciousness about the existence of extraterrestrial life and its connection to us as a species going back hundreds of thousands of years.
Indeed, and isn't it such a beautiful thing, this aspect of revelation? I mean, for many of you and myself in this field of inquiry over many long years, having been very marginalized and to a great extent ridiculed, doesn't it feel good and timely that finally there is a real voice emerging? And is it a nefarious thing that government, the parent corporation, is participating in disclosure? Meaning to say, how much of the disclosure and the revelation is orchestrated narrative in order to thwart an organic grasp of what's really happening, if you follow?
Yes, that definitely is part of this. I mean, you can just look at this legislation, this extraordinary legislation, this Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act for 2023, which just passed recently the US Senate, and it's going to be included in the upcoming National Defense Authorization Act for 2024. And it sets out this very elaborate process where all the advanced technologies, all of the extraterrestrial intelligences that have been acquired by private organizations, and we're talking corporations, now become public property. They come into eminent domain is asserted over those. And so you have to ask yourself, well, why is it that all of a sudden you have the Democrats and the Republicans that are fighting on every possible issue you can imagine, but when it comes to UFOs, there's consensus. They passed this act in the Senate unanimously, and now it's going to pass through the House, and then it's going to be adopted and signed into law. And I think the reason is you got this consensus between the white hats and the black hats. The white hats all along have wanted disclosure, and they wanted it because for them it means bigger and better toys, space toys.
Right.
And for the dark hats, they've always kept this kind of in the dark because they didn't want the people to know the truth, because to them, this was how you manipulate human consciousness.
Right.
So they realized they can't stop it anymore. So they've agreed to allow it come forward, because now they're going to manipulate the public perception in terms of extraterrestrial life, in terms of a threat, in terms of a possible invasion, in terms of some kind of major events that are going to happen, that are going to dwarf 9/11 and enable them to pass emergency powers acts and declare national emergencies and do all sorts of things. So I think we are witnessing this disclosure, this official disclosure process moving forward, because both the black hats and the white hats want it, but for very different reasons.
Indeed. Very good. Well stated. My co-host, Scotty Sachs. Scotty, sorry, I should have brought you in a little earlier. I actually didn't see you on the bottom of my screen. Good to have you.
Good to see you, Sacha. Saw you in Vegas a few weeks ago. You haven't stopped talking since. It's what you do so well. You know, I want to share a quick anecdote, Sacha. In early 2000, I was producing a TV show at the Blue Angels. And I'd asked the captain of the Blue Angels, of course, that's the stunt pilot team that flies air shows for the Navy. And I asked him what was the most interesting encounter he had. I presumed it was a near death or, you know, a flight accident, mid-flight, maybe mishap, so to speak. He told me his most interesting experience flying lead for the Blue Angels was his encounter with a UFO. And that was early 2002, 2003. To me, it was just a concept back then, but very eye-opening for a man of distinction flying for the Blue Angels to encounter UFO and to talk about it with me very openly. But Michael, I'm really curious, this term.
Don't forgive me, Scotty.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring my other guests on first. Sure. Before you start fielding questions. Let me just introduce Tony Rodriguez, abducted by an Illuminati family, sold as a military asset, and used in child torture programs to gain knowledge in consciousness and medical advancement. He was a slave on Mars and Ceres Colony and is bringing the knowledge and technology that he learned about there to this plane of existence. And he's very, very welcome on the AGN. Tony, happy to meet you.
Hi, Sacha. It's happy to meet you too. Thanks for having me here. It's good to see you guys again, and happy to meet you and Scotty for the first time. That's a mouthful. When you introduce me like that, I know that it's kind of the deep end of the pool for most people when you say that I was on Mars and on Ceres Colony and lived in space for a while. But I got my memories back and then cross-referenced them and had my testimony and just put it out there. And it snowballed into something that's relevant. And I'm still going today, and actually having remembered how some of the technologies work up there, I'm working to reverse engineer and develop them for us as well recently. So that's why I'm still here talking. So thanks for having me.
Well, God bless you for your remarkable incarnation, your beautiful journey. And I rather suspect you're now coming into a very unique platform. And I personally can't wait for this stuff to really hit the mainstream, because it's going to break the spine of a very arcane Babylonian priesthood and a controlled narrative, which is so steeped in blood cult and in misery. So I personally welcome it. And the more radical the conversation becomes, actually, I think the more beneficent it becomes to humanity. We have to completely appoint an entire conceptual framework of reality. We have to assume that mantle. And those who don't are likely to perish or certainly go mad. Jean-Charles Moyen is our last panelist, known as an ET contactee of the fourth kind. And after his abduction at the age of 4 in front of his parents, he returned with unique abilities and was recruited as a super soldier in ultra top secret Franco-American space programs on off-planet missions aboard the Sallas ship, part of the Solar Warden fleet, jumping through portals to rescue humans and non-human slaves, fighting reptilians and other species. He's also linked to certain arcs by his very particular DNA, not forgetting that the blood, the DNA, is a fractal antenna to the entire cosmos. We understand the hard physics of that. He's also a director, producer, and actor of documentaries describing his remarkable life in detail, including his incredible documentary, Revelations Starseed 2. Jean-Charles, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Sacha. I'm very happy to be here today, and thank you to receive me. Yes, my experience is very special because everything I live with my parents, and their testimony, everything they live with me during my childhood until now. So I explain my life during my age adult, and my special abilities, like you say, when I return of this abduction when I was 4 on the beach in France in front of my parents. And everything is evidence was proof with my dear friend Dan Winter, the specialist of the brainwave. He spent I think 51 years to explore and analyze the gamma wave of the children. They can read a book without her eyes, and he tests my brainwave and discover something very unique of my brainwave, because every brainwave is out of the charts, and they must reduce the graphic. So I was very grateful for this evidence, scientific evidence, like say my friend Michael and Danny. This is very interesting for people that we have a testimony of witness, a real witness. We have a scientific proof. We have a photograph, and everything is very. It's a new step for humanity, because everything we live in this world, may sometime we can't prove. We can't have evidence because your photograph don't work, or there is no witness, you are alone, and blah blah blah. So I'm very happy to give for the people the evidence that something else exists, real exists. So this is my testimony for people and for humanity.
Indeed, Jean-Charles, thank you so much. And again, also, I just want to salute you as one of the remarkable voices of our time. And I'm so excited that your incarnation now finds its fulmination, along with Tony and Michael and other great noble pioneers in this incredible subject. Again, it's revelation. It couldn't be more perfectly anointed. Scotty Sachs, who would have thunk, pal, Q3 2023, and here we are dragging this subject into the mainstream through our broadcast and reaching so many people around the world. Doesn't it feel good?
Well, we are the mainstream media now, Sacha. You know, I've been saying that every chance I get. It's amazing to have guys like John Charles and Tony here that have reincarnated, as you say. I have so many questions. I'll hold them until the proper time, Sacha. But guys, thank you for joining us today. I'm really curious to understand how you got your memory back, how that came about. Was it a moment in time or over time? What was the process of coming back to oneself and realizing what your journey had been?
Oh, so here I am. I popped up. For me, it was, I had shades of the memories all along. So I was taken at 10 years old and served in the programs till I was 30, and then age regressed somehow and put back. the next day. So it's very hard to explain that quickly for somebody that's never heard of that before. And then I lived my life. I carried on from 10 years old into adulthood. And I had vague bleed-through memories that didn't make sense. They were not dreams. They were memories where I could remember having a career and being in space and friendships and being in Seattle and in Peru, places that I'd never visited in my life. So these memories were there, but they didn't make any sense. So I just brushed them off and lived my life. I had an event in May of 2015. It turned out coincidentally that I had an MRI scan of my head about 10 days before, a few weeks before. And I watched on exopolitics.org Dr. Sallas interview with a guy named Randy Kramer, who explained that they were taking people. I always remember the initial abduction, and I thought that I may have been abducted many times, and that's why I remembered being with ETs as an adult and with ETs as a child. So I thought I was abducted several times and put back, and I just didn't remember the event. And when I saw that they could take you for 20 years and then put you back, it dawned on me. I went, oh my God, that's what happened. They held me for 20 years. And then it gave those memories that had nowhere to go, somewhere to go. And they just kind of coalesced. And in the event, in the next 3 days, I got big chunks of the memories back, and it made sense. And I started to investigate the places that I remembered on Earth at the time, because I lived on Earth for like 6 to 8 years. And when I investigated the places that I had never been in my real life, my organic timeline, my organic life, when I investigated the places I remembered, they were there. And I had intimate knowledge of sites that I shouldn't have. And so that's when it became real to me, and I decided to speak out about it. I didn't want to take this information to the grave. So that was the process. And then over the next few months, I got more chunks of memories. The very emotional, long-term memory is tied directly to emotion. So I remembered the emotional moments the clearest. And then over time of just people, questions and answers, and developing exercises, mental exercises, I remembered more of the mundane stuff, like brushing your teeth.
That's so interesting, Tony, what you're saying. I want to just jump in there. When you mention and underscore emotionality, that seems to be the quintessence of what is most fascinating about the human condition as it relates to the scrutiny that we're under from the galactic intelligences. They seem to be uniquely interested in emotion and emotionality. Why is that?
Well, like I said, there's a direct correlation between emotional events and long-term memory. And people, we see when you look at society as a whole, the people that tend to get to the top and are very achieved are in control of their emotions. Bad emotional things happen and they weather the storm. And people that are criminal and are very detrimental to society are not in control of their emotions. They have anger flares up and they take action and do bad things. So emotion seems to be a benchmark of really what your consciousness is capable of. And so in my case, I can only speak to what I know. And in my case, it was the emotional things that I remembered that I never forgot.
Right.
So beautiful. I never forgot the emotional thing, being in love, for instance.
Beautifully stated. Love it. Michael, that this audience is different to the Lazarus Initiative audience, and you're much beloved by the Lazarus Symposium audience. But this is a slightly different audience, and obviously many of them are going to be new to the subject, won't even know what exopolitics means. Can you just briefly couch exopolitics? What does it mean? Why is it now a very important aspect of our planetary psyche, the engagement with off-world intelligences?
Well, exopolitics is, put it most simply, it's really about the political issues concerning extraterrestrial life. And we're kind of watching that now play out in real time in terms of how the US Congress is taking up the issue, not because they call it UAPs, but UFOs. They're taking up the mantle not because they're now all of a sudden interested in UFOs because these are an issue of scientific interest or because they are a kind of public interest. They're talking about it now because by and large, a lot of Congress is being told that UFOs are a national security threat, that they pose this kind of threat to national security, which means that political decisions have to be made about what to do about it. So that's exopolitics. So all of a sudden, exopolitics, which up until recently was considered conspiracy theory, all about UFOs, extraterrestrial life, that for most people hadn't been proved. Now, all of a sudden, it is front and center a national security issue, a serious national security issue, where you don't just have the US Congress kind of like developing an interest in it. You have the Pentagon setting up a study group called the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. You have NASA setting up its own study group to deal with UFOs, and you actually have the White House actually setting up an interagency working group headed by President Biden, Joe Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan. He heads an interagency working group to deal with the UFO phenomenon. So it's because UFOs have been elevated from this realm of conspiracy theory to now being an urgent national security issue. So that means exopolitics is upon us. We will have to be educated about when did this UFO phenomenon begin? Did it all begin in 2004, as public officials want us to believe, that the UFO issue suddenly became real because you had these pilots from the USS Nimitz seeing these UFOs, and they were photographed and seen on radar tracking? Or does the UFO issue go all the way back into the 1940s and even the 30s, with crashes in Italy and crashes in Nazi Germany developing flying saucer programs? So these are all issues now that are real, because the whole political apparatus in the United States is now considering UFOs this national security threat, and legislation has been proposed and actually is in the midst of being passed right now.
Very good. Jean-Charles, need to ask you here, could you just share with us what is a contactee of the fourth kind? And could you also elaborate a little on what you mean by Solar Warden Fleet and how involved each country in the world is in various secret space programs, to your knowledge?
Yes. First, I want to rebound for the first question about memories. Very important. In my case, I had my memory at 85% since I was young. The rest of the memory was rise with I thought the word with hypnosis, but 85 memories was in my life during my childhood, because when I was 4, 6, and 7, I spoke with my parents. I was in a big corridor with different alien species, in a school, in a spaceship. So I was 6. Okay, so I remember each detail since I was a child. For the Solar Warden, during this program, a lot of people say, the Space Force is only America. It's wrong.
Yeah.
There is a lot of country in the world with a Space Force. The French have the Space Force, and the United States have the Space Force. During the Second War, there is the agreement between America and France for the World War II, So they built with different alien technology, retrieving a crash and retro-engineering, some space fleet. In the Solar Warden, there was a different section, different departments, and there was a spaceship called the Solaris. I was in this spaceship when I was young, at 13. And I was my class, like a military class, and I was training in this spaceship until 7 years. And after that, they bring me back in a different timeline. I know it's very difficult to understand, but it's the truth. In different timeline. After that, I grow, and at the adult age, I go to the military service obligation in France. And during my military service, I was in a section of commando parachutist in an Air Force France base. And during this, I had a big injury on my shoulder, and I was hospitalized. And during my hospitalization, I was bring again for my adult age in a spaceship called the Solaris 2, but for the sequel of my training. And during my adult age in the military, I was in a special section with special beings and the team, rescue team, to rescue the slave into different planets like Ceres, like Mars, like another universe. And during the mission, at this moment, I don't know my friend now, Tony. And in my new documentaries, Starseed Revelation 2, I spoke about a mission to save, to rescue slavery in a series. It was 9 months before the book of Ceres Colony release of the detail. I don't know at this moment of Tony. Though with Tony, we have a connection, a special connection, very, very, very special connection, because we know each other before. When we was young, I met Tony, and maybe Tony can explain in the point of view. But for me, I remember Tony when I was young, enter in this room into a portal, and at this moment, they follow me, but they don't want to follow me. And now we understand why. Because in this timeline, Tony was sent to reveal what's happening in space for the slavery. And he must, at this moment, live this experience, this bad experience, to testimony for the world what's happened. And this is I met a lot of people in my life, and every people say, I have a deja vu with you, Jean-Charles, and we have a corroboration, but at this moment, he write a book and I make my movie, but we don't know each other, and everything corroborates. It's a crazy evidence, you know? So if my dear friend and brother...
Here he is. There he is.
You can explain, Tony, for our gathering when we were young together in your room, please.
Yeah, it was a revelation from last year when we met in person in October at the first conference that Danny threw, the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection. We had dinner and we talked about some things, and it all came back to me. So when you're talking about a childhood memory and you're confirming it with somebody else, it's very difficult to make that tangible to where you can use it as evidence. So I immediately went to my mother, and she remembered the conversation. She thought that I had an imaginary friend. So the other thing that happened was that when I got the memories back, we were busy. And so the following week, I got a hold of Jean-Charles and we spoke privately. And I said, I remember Charlie, a childhood friend that was you. And I described the experience, and he said it was similar to what it was like on the ship he was, Solaris, like some of the details of the experience. And he said that I remember that the first instance where he visited me, and then I was taken with him shortly, and I got scared and didn't want to go, that he spoke French, and there was a like a window where we could communicate. And he said he was trying to say, remember, learn French, and we got each other's names. So we were kids. We were both kids. And he said he was Jean-Charles, and I still have a hard time with Jean-Charles. Last year I kept saying, I want to say Jean or John or John. So I had a hard time. And back then I just couldn't put it together. And he said, Charlie, I'm Charlie. Friends call me Charlie. And so I told my mom, I'm a 10-year-old or 7-year-old kid. And I told my mom, I hope my friend Charlie comes back. And she said, oh, that's cute. You have an imaginary friend. I said, no, he visits me. He's my friend, Charlie. Well, unbeknownst, roll the clock forward to last year. Nobody knew Jean-Charles his nickname was till he was only 13 or 14, that his friends called him that. And then he never used it again. So nobody knew that he was Charlie. And I said that. His eyes kind of lit up. And I remember a few. I remember him coming as a much older person and visiting, saying that the people that took me created a fracture, like a portal. They left the portal open, so it let them find me. So that's what I remember him saying. Like they left the portal. Like there's apparently a process to the technology where they can close it behind them or shut it off, but there was a rift that allowed him to find me as an adult. So I remember being visited a handful of times by him back then. And then it turned out, I think the same year I was taken, I was 10. He did the math on his. It was the same year that he went into the programs too. So there's a lot of similarities. And I know I'm the first to admit that it's very hard to believe for people that are unfamiliar with what's really going on. I want to touch on one other thing, is that post-disclosure, post-world where the entire populace is aware of the intelligent life out there and the vastness of it, is a beautiful thing. That state of mind that we're all going to have, just that change of being aware that there are beautiful civilizations out there, is going to be an upgrade to our consciousness across the board. Just entertaining. Right now, people are not allowed to entertain the thought, so nobody does. People do not look up. By and large, 99 out of 100 people are not interested in space at all. And the reality is that the diversity and all of the wonder that's out there opens your mind up, and it's a very beautiful state of mind. That's what life on the Ceres colony, even though I was, it was oppressive and I was in a prisoner-like situation, still being aware of what the universe, the true nature of the universe, I was preferable to how we're living now. So I just wanted to mention that. I think we touched on it earlier.
No, that's beautifully stated. I mean, because at the end of the day, what we're looking at is the great event horizon here, which is going to demarcate the line in the sand between an old draconian and sort of Babylonian constricted death cult engineered galactic sleep cycle to the other, and the other being the morphogenetic flaming of the collective human heart into an upshift for not just our so-called civilization, remembering at all times that this incredible Christic plane of existence of the angelic human, the hybrid, the galactic hybrid human, which is by definition, to my mind, the realization of the angelic human, becomes the beacon in the entire universe for the Jacob's ladder and the redemption and salvation of all living systems, as I understand it, in the cosmos. Danny, what are your thoughts on my grandiose statements there? How important is the human being?
It's everything. It's everything. I want to say to all the hundreds of thousands of adults and children out there that if you have an inkling that something happened to you, you were abducted, you met with ETs, you traveled off planet, maybe you were in a space program, I want to say to you, we believe you. We believe you. That's the first thing. It doesn't mean you have to go into free fall drama or trauma, because it can be a little unsettling. But the thing to know now is that you've been lied to your whole life, and every single system is connected to our off-planet brothers and sisters. So we mentioned earlier long-term memory, long-term emotional memory. And Tony was saying that he remembers long-term because at one point he was in love when he was enslaved on Ceres Colony, or Ceres Corporation, as it's also known, same as Mars Corporation. And it reminds me, Sacha, of our dear friend Kathy O'Brien, classic example, also collapsing in the separation of ETs that are not separate, and the control and all the deals, all the governments, the governors, school boards, senators, you name it, the puppets behind the scenes who control all of them. They were all working together the entire time. So they are all connected. Kathy O'Brien, as you know, was trained from birth with a disgusting father, sold to the CIA, FBI, used as a sex toy, a sex mule, as many other were. There are still people alive today in the governments that sexually abused her and her little girl. This is all connected. Tony Rodriguez here can't say everything that happened to him in 1 hour, but believe me, his story is harrowing, and it still happens today, where adults are using children as sex slaves in hidden programs, and some of the people who are doing the abuse have told them that these children are clones, because that technology exists too, but these apparent clone children feel every bit of that pain. To help people also understand, there is no security issue. Are we all Muppets, really, that can't think? How could it possibly be there is now a security issue on our planet, our beautiful planet? If the ETs were going to harm us, they would have done it already. Duh. We had the Dracos and the Greys. Now they have been removed. They were working with the demonic humans who work behind the scenes to control. Now the Dracos have gone, the Greys have gone, and so all we're left with now is the possessed demonic leaders on the top of our planet. I like to call them the deletes because they're all being deleted now. So there's no security issue, but what they want is to frighten the people, the beautiful people that have learned and programmed to trust their governments. They want them to think, oh, there's going to be an invasion. There's not going to be an invasion. And if you see anything, know this. Half the military craft that you see in the sky, I'm sorry, that was a Freudian or a faux pas there, but it's quite deliberate. Half the craft that you see in the sky, everyone on the earth watching this right now, is a military craft. It's reverse engineered military craft, okay? There's lots of ways to be able to tell the difference. You are seeing real extraterrestrial, beautiful, benevolent craft, and you are seeing military craft that is flown around with whatever cargo they have, that what they're saying they're taking down systems. No, they're not. Everyone is lied to. Everybody is lied about. So half the craft you see are driven by military personnel. To help humanity really level up quickly, I'm going to tell you something. If you just on your own time research Project Paperclip and then Project Operation High Jump, Paperclip High Jump, that will give you a bit of the background, the World War II programs that have been in place to this very, very day. I also want you to remember that in the 1950s, in the administration of Dwight Eisenhower, there was a man that served in the White House and Pentagon. His name is Val Thor, sometimes known as Valiant Thor. He was a physical person from a different plane. He was from Venus. Laugh all you like. You have been programmed the second you hear something to think that's stupid. And you know what? The worst thing for a human, one of them, is to be isolated, to be shamed, to be embarrassed. All of us in this screen are long-termers in being embarrassed, humiliated, and shamed, death threats, you name it. And we don't care because we love you. So we need to hurry up and get you up to speed. Project Paperclip, Operation High Jump. Think about Val Thor, physical representation in the government. It didn't work. The governments did not want to work with the ETs and give us, humanity, technology and medicines that would help us. Nobody should be suffering on this planet. We're suffering, and there's generational great-grandparents, grandparents, mum and dad, all of your families. It's intergenerational abuse and psychological warfare on you, beloveds.
Indeed.
On you.
Indeed. And I would say, just with a little sardonic humor before I hand the stick to Scotty, I know he's got questions for all of our panelists. I would say with a little sardonic humor, Danny, that there is an invasion. There has been an invasion. There is an existential security threat, but it's not coming from out there. It's the one coming into mRNA intervention, courtesy of your local public health administrator, your local government, your federal government, your doctors and nurses in their systemic pig ignorance about science. So we do have an alien invasion in that sense, and it's coming to us through inoculations. And we need to be very, very cautious now how we navigate the great reckoning, each of us, because it is the abdication or the abnegation of your soul sovereignty which is at stake. So when you offer your arm up to a lethal injection, to any kind of injection, come to think of it, I can't think of a single vaccine, so-called vaccine, that has any pertinence or relevancy to human health. It certainly doesn't. And I'm somewhat expert in the subject now, having danced with at least 200 of the greatest scientists and doctors on Earth in the last 24 years. Soul sovereignty and the fabric of human soul is really what's at stake here. I just want to take the conversation a little into that arena. Scotty Sachs, you've got the floor.
Well, Danny, so well said. Thank you. I really relate to what you said. Tony, you said the word diversity. I'm thinking, oh, great. In the woke exopolitics of the left, we're going to have to be talking about diversity and equity for extraterrestrials now, aren't we? But in all seriousness, I'm curious. Tony and Charlie, were you guys given permission by any individual, organization, or body to come forward? Are you doing this with some sort of intent of your own, or with permission from some government organization? I'm really curious about that.
No, I don't have any permission. It's my life, so I share for people. But in my life, I had a big trouble with Men in Black during my my adult age in France. So I met these guys called Men in Black, and they target me with a directed energy weapon against me. So I'm lucky I'm alive now, but in other way, I don't have a problem to spoke about what I live in my life. I don't know for Tony, but for me, no problem.
Tony, how about you?
Not that okay, so there, I don't think that I would have gotten as far as I have in speaking about this publicly over the last, since 2015. So coming up on, over 8 years, 7, 8 years, without help. Especially the project that I've begun since last year and trying to build the learning platform. I've had, it's beyond luck. So I've had things that it just happens too often. So I think that there's, an angel on my shoulder in a sense of the word. But as far as like where I sat down with somebody in authority and asked permission, no. I got my memories back, and I did not want to take. When I first got my memories back, I was overwhelmed with. I don't want to say the fear, but the horrible thought of taking it to the grave. I did not want to take all the info. It was just too much. There was just too much information there to not tell anybody. It was just, I couldn't. I needed to speak to someone. I wanted therapy, but I knew I wasn't going to get it. There was just too much that all came overnight. And I thought that this and the other, there were other whistleblowers out at the time. So the information was starting to take hold of the secret space program and the 20 and back phenomenon. It was really snowballing. Now it's under great attack, it seems.
Yeah, Tony, to me, there's implied consent. You wouldn't be here if, they didn't want you out with this. So you're sort of outing the whole thing, your experiences, both of you. I think there's implied consent in the fact that you're here on this broadcast. I'm very curious, Michael, in the world of exopolitics and the whole framework of that, is there a political structure amongst extraterrestrials? Do they have a political structure as we know it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is something that we have to keep in mind, that humanity, we are a hybrid species involving the intervention of multiple extraterrestrial civilizations over hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. So if you want to understand the ways extraterrestrials structure themselves in terms of organization and how they behave, just look at humanity, at how we structure ourselves. So just as we have nation states governing territorial regions, and we have regional actors governing nation states in a particular area, and we have like a supranational group like the United Nations governing the whole globe, you have something similar happening with extraterrestrials. You have different extraterrestrial organizations that operate, and they operate in terms of geographical regions. One way to kind of understand it is that there is the Orion constellation appears to be dominated by a particular group that is called the Orion Syndicate. You can look at other civilizations like the Anunnaki, that they also have a kind of imperial system that operates throughout the galaxy, that is centered on the Sirius star system as their kind of home star system, their home world. Then you have the Draconians, this very aggressive reptilian species that are also very imperialistic, and they go out and they kind of like do the thing that imperial conquering races do. They look for weak spots. They look for decaying empires. They look for areas that are kind of like not dominated by a rival, and so they'll go in and they'll dominate. So the Earth at the moment, as far as I can tell, it's almost like we are, we've been contested over by these different competing extraterrestrial organizations. And up until recently, the Orion Syndicate, the Draconian Empire were dominant on Earth, but they've been pushed aside. They've had to leave because of a number of factors that have to do with this kind of great awakening. And now it seems that we are going to start to work much more with these kind of benign, benevolent races, the human-looking races that are part of a galactic federation of worlds, very similar to the Star Trek idea, and that a positive faction of the Anunnaki are also part of that they are returning. So yeah, definitely the extraterrestrials are organized politically, and we need to kind of like learn about these different groups and how historically they've kind of vied and jockeyed with one another for possession of solar systems or regions of space such as the Earth.
Very good. I just want to speak to Tony about the experiences he has regarding Vanguard technologies, and what technologies have you learned about? Are you able to speak distinctly to any of them, and what we can look forward to hitting the high streets, so to speak, let's say in the next 3 to 5 years? I think that's probably a realistic window.
So the one that everybody beats the door down for is a med bed technology or medical technology. And that wasn't the wheelhouse that I was in. In fact, I was skilled labor. So when I was up there, I was a cargo engineer and I was ship maintenance. And both of them were not very prominent positions. But they did train me for the positions, and the software that they put me through, the training, the method of training was very effective. And so much so that when I came back and was a kid and went to school, I missed it. I felt like they're doing pad and paper and memorization and doing your multiplication over and over again was just super archaic for me. So I'm working on a learning platform that's just based on adaptive decision-based learning, which is what I learned up there. And it's just, the goal is just to make learning happen a little faster. And it's a big subject. So the infrastructure of education, since I've taken on this company and had people contact me to see the real 100-headed hydra of education and see how it works, is a lot of challenges. So we're building a learning system, and it may flow, whatever the course that it takes to fruition. So it may go in any of several directions, but there's a huge demand for something like this. So that's what I'm working on. I presented a couple conferences ago on things that I saw. There was, welding technology. Everybody wants like I said, the medbed and the engine and the free energy. And those are things that even the colonies didn't really know how they work. They leased a lot of these things from other civilizations. So they had an agreement to trade for high output free energy engines, for instance. So there are some things in development. I'm working on the learning software the idea is to shave off the time it takes to learn something from A to Z. So whatever the subject is.
Interesting.
That's what I'm working on.
Right. How relevant, in your view, with the experience that you've had, the memories that you have and have to intersect with this temporal life, how important is the human being in the grand scheme of things as you understand it? How important are we on this plane?
That's something that could be debated for thousands of years. But the human being is far more powerful than we've been led to believe. In fact, talking about the medical situation, really, we don't need a lot of medical technology. We just need to quit being poisoned.
Very
good. We are amazing all on our own. We just need the mental poison to go away, and we need the food poisoning to go away. People are very healthy, and we can lead a very good lifestyle and live beyond 100 years. And with the human body is great just how it is. It's just that we've been negatively affected by the control mechanisms that we are under. So that's for first. And then we can go on to worry about life extension, other technologies. Right now, AI is the hot button. Everybody's afraid of the scary AI. But what I always say is that, I forget the name of the experiment. When you look at a wall, the quantum particles change because of your consciousness. When you look at something, the particles in it change because of your consciousness. And AI cannot do that, and it's aware of that. So AI will never just take everything over and kill off all the humans. We are made of consciousness, and it is not. And so our conscious, our minds are very, very, very powerful. That they've, like Danny was saying, you're conditioned to laugh if I say that you have psychic ability, that you have intuitive ability, you can tune in, you can tell what other people are feeling, you can do remote viewing, you can do all these things, you can train yourself to do it. It's very easy. Well, it's very doable. Most people are trained to laugh at that. Any kind of psychic, medium work, readings, all of it, it's been stigmatized. But the reality is that your consciousness goes, in the words of Robert Monroe, your consciousness is bigger than your body. You're greater than your body. And that's the truth. So human beings are a step to another, in the wheel of incarnating, which you've mentioned, which is good to hear. Human beings are a natural step to the next thing, which is going to be a human being that lives longer. And then the next one above that's going to be a being that understands things consciously, subconscious things. There's not the subconscious and the conscious will wither away at a certain level. And then there are beings even above that. The other thing the other deception is that we've been told we're the top of the food chain, and we're not. We're in the middle of a natural cycle of a chain of consciousness, and we're coming into our day to expand. Disclosure and being aware of other examples to aspire to other beings and their lifestyles to aspire to is going to be a big step for us, because right now we don't have the example. The examples have been hidden from us. Right. So disclosure, just that. We don't need to travel anywhere. We just need to be aware of these great beings, these great minds that are in the universe, and we will aspire to be more like them. And that's going to be a quantum leap for everybody.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tony. Beautifully stated. Well, coming to the end of this panel, just want to quickly get Jean-Charles' take on where we're headed in the next few short years. How pessimistic or optimistic are you, Jean-Charles?
I don't understand really the question. Can you repeat?
The question is, everyone is sensing a cloud of doom. People are sensing catastrophic failure of the social economy, of the political landscape, of civilization, of the biosphere. The parent corporation has sold us misery and dread and fear. And many people in the world, by best accounts 5 billion, have volunteered themselves up to a satanic intervention with a vaccination program. So it doesn't feel very light planetarily in that sense. I'm interested to know, what is your sense of the imminent future?
I think there is a plan to afraid the people, because the deep state realize that the people change our mind, and they rise a lot of power inside, and this power is love, and they're afraid of this, so they create a fear with vaccine and with a lot of economy breakdown and a lot of things. But I think personally that the human people, the beings is more stronger than they think, and the deep state don't want that. They try to sleep people with a 5G, with a chemtrail, with a lot of things, because they know this is the last time for us, because the light win. Okay, I think the light win, and the hope for the people is the love. There are a lot of things, disclosure, like the children slave, and a lot of things rise in information. The information is access for each want to access, with the internet. If you don't know, it's because you don't want to know. Okay, because everything is in front of you. I don't say everything is right. Okay, you must be careful what you found in the internet. There is a lot of things. Okay, there is a lot of video about extraterrestrial, about abduction, and maybe there is a 95 false, but there is 5% real, but it's inside the big liar. So people don't know what I say, okay, what I believe, and they lost. Okay, this is
Very
the
good.
plan. They don't want the humanity wake up. Okay, so for me, the best thing is gathering a lot of people, a lot of disclosure. I'm very sad for something, because there is a lot of disclosure, like in Washington, with a lot of people like Stephen Greer and a lot of military guys and good guys. But each time there is a team, they don't want to say that, or they say a bad thing about us, about why
Yes.
everybody work together for the same way, the way the disclosure. You know, people say, is it true that they say in Washington? No, you don't care, you don't mind about that. The truth is, their disclosure, we are not alone. This is the real thing.
Very
After
good.
there is different story, military leaves this, and no, just focus for the information. The prime information is we are not alone. And since 80 years, they hidden the real technology, the inverse technology, the retroengineering, the medbed, the lot of things, the portal, the teleportation. This is the important things. Okay, the people must focus for this, uh, like different sources of disclosure. But the best thing is we are not alone, and they tell to everybody. Okay.
Very good. Very good. Jean-Charles, thank you so very much. Dr. Michael Salla, last word to you, brother. How pessimistic or optimistic are you?
Well, I'm very optimistic. I think we are going to very soon experience an incredible transition on this world. The introduction of technologies, advanced technologies, the cleansing of the planet, the liberation of humanity's consciousness from these oppressive, subtle control systems that have been put in place. But we are still in this transition period where the deep state, the controllers, still have a few cards to play. They haven't played all their cards, but the thing is, every time they've played a card, every time they've played something to manipulate the public, whether it's a stolen election, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's manipulating financial structures, every time they play one of those cards, what happens is that millions and millions and millions of more people become awakened. They recognize that this is a scam, that there's a hidden power structure that is manipulating them, and so people become awake. I mean, we have now millions of medical doctors who are conspiracy theorists, whereas if you go back 4 years ago, I mean, doctors were probably the most conservative and the most resistant to a lot of this information that we've been sharing. But now many doctors are at the forefront because their eyes have been awakened. And so that's what's happening. Every time the deep state plays one of its cards, it leads to more and more people waking up. And so I think the next card they're going to play is something to do with the extraterrestrial. They're going to play that card. You know, whether it's going to be a false flag, it'll be a false flag event of some kind, whether it's an invasion, whether it's some kind of an attack, whether it's some kind of sinister presence that is played out that's considered national. They're going to play that, but the same result will emerge, that more and more people will realize that, oh, wow, this is a big scam, that this is not real. This is just something else they've been lying to us about. So the end result will be that eventually the deep state will have played all its cards. It'll be swept from power. The white hats will come in, and then all of this incredible technology, the extraterrestrial visitors that are here, kind of like wanting to support and mentor us as we go through this transition, you know, break through the kind of the egg of ignorance, becoming cosmically aware, that they are here to help us do that. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, and it's not going to take that much time.
Beautiful. Dr. Michael Salla, Tony Rodriguez, and Jean-Charles Moyen, thank you so very much. And a special thank you to Danny Henderson, who is heading up the Galactic and Spiritual Informers Conference coming up. Check the links. This is syndicating. We've got a couple of thousand people watching live now in the room, in a couple of rooms. and probably a great many more besides. But certainly this will get to a huge audience later today and tomorrow. So be sure to follow Galactic and Spiritual Informers Conference. Guys, I just want to thank you all very much indeed for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, darling, so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sacha.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very good. Thank you, Danny. Much love to you, girl. All right, Scotty Sachs, 1 minute to you before we bring in the lion himself, Nick Alvier.
Looking forward to Nick. Sacha, you know, it's pretty hard to listen to the Charlie and Tony and Michael if you're a non-believer in all these things, exopolitics, extraterrestrial. Pretty hard to listen to these guys and not take heed and stand up and pay attention, isn't it?
Well, the one thing that they have in common is they're in balance, they're in harmony, they have got actualized consciousness and intelligence and a serendipity and grace in their demeanor, and that to me means a whole lot. Again,
right.
It comes back down to our God-given senses. What do you see? What do you touch? What do you feel? What do you hear? What do you sense about people and about the truth that they speak? Well, if you'd rather listen to Rachel fucking Maddow, good luck to you. Good luck. All right, let's bring on the man himself, Nick Alvier. Thank you for joining us today, brother. Now you're going to have to unmute your microphone.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, this is perfect. I said, can you hear me properly? And then it's like you heard me. Hey, how are you guys? How's everyone doing?
Very, very happy to see you, Nick. And I know Scotty was looking forward to saying hi.
Hey, Nick. Great to see you. Been circulating the greatest show on earth. It really is a great tool for connecting the dots for even people who have been awake for a while are getting a lot of value out of it. So thanks. A lot of gratitude for that work. I'm sure you spent a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of homework, a lot of sweat equity went into that.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. Thank you. It was a lot of nights till 4 a.m. and a lot of writing. I think about the first 2 weeks was getting the script down and understanding it. And then, it's the most fun part does become the most grueling. And that's when you are editing and adding the music and the visuals and everything. But it looks like it could be fun to do, but it's actually really hard work. So thank you for saying that.
Believe me, I completely understand what it takes, Nick, and huge salutations to you. To the audience, Nick Alvier, filmmaker, founder at Good Lion TV, also known now as the Netflix of conspiracies, a music producer, Venus Looking Glass, and the famed J6 Doobie Smoker. I haven't the faintest fucking idea what that means, mate. I've got to ask you. In Nick's 57th film, The Greatest Show on Earth, 57th film, The Greatest Show on Earth, the audience explores Trump as commander-in-chief through a timeline presentation. And Nick will also be on the Lazarus Symposium coming up on September the 30th, which is in a week from today, to discuss his film on Great Tartaria. Nick, 57 films. Are you serious?
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, right? It's pretty crazy. It's been a 3-year labor of love that really started off with a very strong. I remember the moment I knew I was going to make documentaries, because I never wanted to make documentaries. It was at my deepest hole that I was in. I'd been fired for being a Trump supporter. And at this time, I was living with my daughter and my wife at the time. And I just felt like a complete loser. At that time, I had just gotten out of a near-death experience in a car accident. And that car accident inspired me to do what I always knew I was going to do as a kid. I always knew as a kid looking into adulthood that I would be a filmmaker and a musician, and that I would help the world with those tools. So when I almost had this near-death experience, I realized, dude, you're not doing it. Come on, let's go. Let's make this happen. And then I became more vocal about Trump. I lost my job. And I remember one day I was sitting watching Fall of the Cabal. And at the time I was editing music videos. And I thought, this isn't very much different from what I'm doing right now. I could do a documentary like this. And that's what inspired me to go find a script to turn into my first documentary. So that was April 2020. And that's how long I've been making these 57 documentaries since that time.
Very good. Well, you still have to answer the question, what is the J6 Doobie Smoker?
So about 10 months into making movies, I realized, Trump's going to have possibly his last rally. So I got to go to it. I have to check this out. So I flew to Washington, D.C. And so when I got there, I've been doing podcasts for a while. And in my podcast, I'd smoke doobies all the time. I'd smoke weed and I'd ask everyone to share what kind of weed they're smoking. It became a bonding thing. And so someone sent me 2 ounces of weed when I got to Virginia, is where I ended up, and before I went to DC. So I just started passing out a bunch of weed because I couldn't take this home with me on a plane. And then I rolled a bunch of joints up and I had them in my fanny pack. And when I made it into the Capitol, because when I went to protest on the lawn and I saw that everyone was going into that building, I knew that I was going to film the whole thing because this was historical. I knew this was a once in a lifetime event. So I hit record and I recorded my entire way up, and I got up quick. And when I was under the rotunda, I realized that I still had a bunch of joints, and I started passing around joints, and we had a smoke session under the rotunda, and Tucker Carlson's videographer was in there. They shared a desk together at that time, and he filmed me, and he said a few things, but the video that got 7 million views on Twitter, he said, what kind of weed are you smoking? And I said, Pinkberry. So he goes home and he puts on Twitter, man smokes doobie under rotunda. And then I became the doobie smoker. So if you type in the doobie smoker in Google, you'll just see everything about me and what happened with January 6th. I don't smoke weed anymore. That's the thing. I think I've smoked enough weed for many lifetimes.
Very good. You told me yesterday you wanted to be a filmmaker since you were 9, and apparently you always carried a notebook with you as a child. So tell us a little bit about that, how you see life as a series of history and ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think growing up with the parents I had kind of programmed this interest. My dad was obsessed with cameras and my mom was obsessed with music, and inherently they're South American. They're great storytellers. And so just hearing my parents tell stories growing up inspired me to love movies. And as a young kid, I would take a notebook with me no matter where I went, and I would jot down ideas. Like I remember an idea of like what the concept of what aliens could be. And I remember as like a 10-year-old writing that aliens are just us in the future, and they're checking back up on us, on themselves. And I remember I lost one notebook when I went to Six Flags Magic Mountain on a water ride. I was so upset, but it just, that stuck with me. Is like, even as a kid, I would carry this around. Inspiration strikes in the most random places. And now you find people with doing it in their phones. But as a kid, up until I'd say 19, I was always jotting down whatever would come. I think I've always had an open channel for inspiration like that.
Beautiful. The Greatest Show on Earth, the 57th film. It's had 717,000 views in 12 days since the online release, which is a remarkable thing. Congratulations there. Please tell us a little bit about the movie and maybe about a couple of the previous ones leading up to this.
Cool. So The Greatest Show on Earth is basically a bird's eye view of what Trump was up to from the end of 2015 up until 2021, 2022. And we survey specific dates in order, and you get to see the theory of, not necessarily theory, you get to see Trump's capitulation tour in alignment with Derek Johnson's work of the executive orders and the federal directives that were also in place. That when you see this film, you get a full picture of what a lot of us conspiracy theorists and have been trying to get across. And I guess you could say it's a conspiracy fact in many ways, because the film isn't just pulling off of thin air concepts. It's actually looking at the .mil websites and .gov websites, and you're getting some real content that you could go research yourself. And so this film has reignited a lot of hope in people who thought, well, I thought there was this plan that the military was taking down the cabal. And throughout the years, things keep happening to where our hope has become eroded. And a lot of people forgot what it felt like. So what's happening is this movie, the common feedback is, oh my God, I cried a few times and I have faith again. And that's exactly what happened to me. And maybe God made me go through all of that so I could understand it and then bring people out of it by bringing myself out of it. So I thought that the movie I made earlier this year in April was going to go crazy like this one. And that was the Brunson brothers film. These group of famous trumpet playing brothers gathered the courage to sue Congress. And they've done it with so much force and tenacity that every single time they get taken down, another brother's lawsuit gets taken up. And you see them just escalating in this battle that they're in, and that was phenomenal. And that's what woke me up out of this lost hope that had happened to me, because I went through jail twice for January 6th, and a lot of people thought, man, if that happened to me, I would have just stopped everything I was doing. But I didn't know anything else but making movies, and I loved seeing what it would do to people. And so this last time I was in jail, I had 2 books. And I had it was the Tartaria book and the Marvelous Adventures of Baron Trump. And when I read that Tartaria book, I knew when I'd come out, I'd make it a movie. So the 3 big movies of this year was the Brunson Brothers, the Tartarian Empire, which is set to be a lengthy series. Let's see, are the books? Normally I have the books behind here. That's going to be great. The next one's all about energy and power and remnant power that they had that is suppressed today. And then, of course, The Greatest Show on Earth, which blew me away. The amount of views and everybody recycling the movie and the visits to goodlion.tv, really, it's blown me away. The way people are receiving it has reminded me of why I do this.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Scotty Sachs, on the floor.
Well, Nick, I'm going to take a stab at why The Greatest Show on Earth has been received the way it has.
Cool.
As somebody that followed Trump, started following him when I started Sovereign Radio in 2020, all through his presidential term, the executive orders and the capitulation tour, those 2 things separate and apart from each other. Every time he wrote an executive order, I would say to my brother and my friends, you see that? You see what he did? The capitulation tour. He went to Saudi Arabia. He did the sword dance. I said, you see what he's doing? No president ever did. No president ever crossed the demilitarized zone in North and South Korea. No president walked in front of the Queen. No president did the things that this man did. And you put them all, those executive orders and the capitulation tour, you strung them together. And everybody in the Trump camp and the I'll call it the hopium camp that believes there's a white hat, the Q movement, all these things that were clues that if you paid attention, you knew something was up. You put it all together in one place, strung it together, each and every executive order, each and every capitulation tour, and it's undeniable now, right? Everything is there in an undeniable way. Derek Johnson's work and the capitulation tour, you cannot deny what's going down, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So let me ask you, do you know what was going on as I did, as it was happening over the years? The fact that you put it together in one place just puts the exclamation mark. Did you understand it as it was unfolding?
Not as it was unfolding. Not at all. I would say I understood all of this in April. So people are like, why didn't you make a movie like this earlier? It's because I wasn't really passionate about it. And once I'm really passionate about something, I make it something. And that's why there's so many movies. But there are bits and pieces of what Trump had done that got me in, like the human trafficking 13848 executive order. That was one of the first things that caught on when I started loving Trump. That was it. And I think it was probably May of 2020. Charlie Freak did this podcast and showed the capitulation tour. And that's when I realized, okay, so something big is happening. And it wasn't until I started writing it and realizing what are the dates for all of these that it all started to make sense. He does the Asia tour. He gets criticized because he's too soft on human rights violations, and then he comes back and he writes up 13848. So like when you get to see every move he made had an equal effect somewhere else progressively for 2, 3, 4 years, then it really makes a good chunk of sense for someone to go, I get it now. And for me, I had that aha moment just in writing it. So this has kind of been a God thing. And while I was writing it, more and more people were bringing up the different types of executive orders that Derek Johnson would bring up. And I thought, okay, this is actually really cool. This isn't going to be foreign to people. It's being spread all over Instagram. And so it was a divine time for this kind of bird's eye view of the forest to come out. It is kind of, it astounds me sometimes thinking how
you gave the truther movement the one thing they needed, which was a documentary with everything in one place, all the evidence there. Because again, between the executive orders and the capitulation tour, the reality of the world as we know it is all right there. With continuity of government and devolution. I bet a lot of our audience doesn't really understand the idea of devolution. Can you take a crack at that? I've not ever been able to explain that real well. Are you able to explain that?
I can give it a go. So when there is a severe national threat or emergency to the way that the government is operating its functions, in order to keep the government surviving, they have to, and I guess you can say, devolve. They're not evolving, they're devolving. They're creating a small group of people who are now going to be responsible for the basic functions of government, while everything else can't be trusted because it's already been alerted that we're under an emergency. In this case, it was an attack from inside. There's a domestic attempt trying to take over the government. So how do you even operate in that kind of a state when you really don't know who you can trust? So the government basically was taken down, reduced in size, and only a few would know and be given roles to keep the basic functions going. So in a way, that's the continuation of government and devolution until the threat is gone. In a way, it's taking care of the deep state. It is getting rid of the deep state. And because this has been a domestic affair, that's been the toughest part. There's so many countries in the world that want to take down America. If you look at how many politicians share a U.S. and Chinese passport, you really start to see that we've been infiltrated on many fronts. So I think what also is difficult is we want answers that we can't get because this is a military operation. And I think that's why Q existed for the brief moment that it did, so that we wouldn't be completely out of the water. And I think that basically sums it up.
Yeah, well done on devolution. I
think that was actually that was very succinct. I'm for one very grateful for that. Thank you. You want people. We spoke yesterday at great length, and Nick, we did a delightful show together, and we both kind of resolved at the end that sovereignty, reclamation of not just human health, obviously from mRNA intervention, which is the great big Sabbatean thrall that we're contained by right now, but more than that, the stepping away from indentureship and enslavement, I have to say, willful and if unconscious, but willful enslavement to a satanic luciferic status quo government, the parent corporation, the Vatican complex, the hegemony of globalist imperialism, which is in our face, the systemic breakdown of family, of community, of morality, and so on and so forth. This is the reason why I use words like satanic, is because that's what it is by definition. It's Saturnian logic. It's inversion of anything that's affirmative or uplifting or creative or expansive or human or humane. So sovereignty and reclamation of sovereignty, stepping away consciously from indentureship to government, to the IRS, to the parent corporation, is becoming now the essential piece, because the distinction I draw is consciousness and consciousness in action. Consciousness without action is neither here nor there. That old tired homily of there is all it takes for evil to prevail is for enough good men to do nothing perfectly describes the idiocy of our status quo. So sovereignty for you is a seminal issue, and you want to empower people to do their research and to reclaim their sovereignty. You and I may even be cooking up a little something together on that. But you believe that many people skip this essential step because they worry it's too complicated. And you'd like to share some examples of gems that you've uncovered and share tips for people to conduct their own inquiry.
Yeah, I mean, particularly we can go along the lines of sovereignty in becoming an American national, a state national, as opposed to an American citizen. You know, some people talk about it and people go, "Oh, that sounds way out of my scope. I don't even know how I could do that." Once you start to research a little bit of it, you'll find that people have been becoming sovereign for quite some time, and there are countries in every there's governments in every state that are sovereign governments. So you can see that there's a network that is developing right now, in the sense that when you get rid of your citizenship, you can cooperate in society way better than, let's say, 50 years ago. And also becoming a sovereign citizen is actually fairly simple now because of the evolution of the processes. That's just on the tip of sovereignty. I feel like if we're ever going to have a revolution, that's going to be the way it'll happen. It'll be the paper revolution.
Yeah.
But we were talking about how a lot of people really get angry when they see their mom or dad just take the TV and they just, okay, the TV said it, you know, we got to go get our shots.
Right.
And they give authority to this TV. There's this thing that happens when you're looking up at something, when you're in church or you're looking at a screen. The tilt of your head puts you in this a different brain state to where you're more susceptible to the information. And that might be part of it. But once you're aware of it, like consciousness in action, then you can undo it. So what's been happening in this movement, someone might say, oh, that's my favorite truther. And so, well, maybe they've had some good info. But what if you've never followed up on what they've said? Eventually, you're going to be just like that mom and dad you're angry at, looking at that TV. But now you're looking at that truther, and just because they said it, you believe it. So a lot of the things that I say, you know, question them. I question them. That's the essence of all my movies, are hitting people in the hearts because they have question marks. They're helping people ask the questions in themselves. And I think that's what we got to get good at, is asking why we are the way we are, why the world is the way it is, instead of just hearing, you know, Truther Joe say it's because of this. It might feel right, but you're going to be a better person when you follow up and you do the research, and then you find out exactly what that means through your lens and your process. And that's all I wish we had more of in this world, because that's how fake news just spreads. When people are lazy and they just want to get their information fed and they don't want to work for it. So there's many angles with this sovereignty. I like what we're cooking too, because I think that is the real revolution in this thing here, this paper revolution. The pen is mightier than the sword. Yeah. And if people realized how we got into this whole like invisible slavery system, they could realize it's very easy to get out. And it just so happened I learned all of it in jail. Like everyone in jail somehow is the most freaking smart people, like who know all of this red pill stuff. Jail is filled with red pill information. It's crazy.
Beautiful.
You know,
well, go ahead. Sorry, brother. I'm looking forward to this weekend. We're doing the Lazarus Symposium. The live panel will be with Nick Alvan. We're going to be speaking about the Tartarian Empire and what it represents in the planetary psyche, as also connected to shift point, because it's not just how we step into the now or into the future with this so-called upshift or paradigmatic shift that is clearly upon us, but that process has also got a great deal to do with the reckoning that we have with the past and with the false light aspect of the past, which it would appear is sizable proportion, arguably 90% of everything we think we know about history, archaeology, and so on, is a complete confounded lie. Now the forensics are coming in on that, and we're going to have to reckon with that. That's going to be a difficult one for many people. In any event, Nick, greatly look forward to the Lazarus Symposium with you, and salutations and congratulations again on what's happening right now. I'm sorry I can't be with you in Nashville donning a large hat and a big buckle, but thank you for the invitation nonetheless. Much love to you, and thank you for joining us on AGN today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, happy to be here.
Great stuff. Scotty, great guy and a great body of work, and good to know that you got people that look like Thor, gods have descended from the sky, incarnated into the Truther movement. A good thing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I want to say, in all fairness to Mom and Dad, Walter Cronkite did tell them every night for years, and that's the way it is, this 23rd day of September. So Mom and Dad, they get a little hall pass, but Peter Jennings did tell me in the 90s that everything we see and hear on TV is a media construct and a narrative. So Peter contradicted Walter. I wonder if we put the two of them together in a room, they're both deceased now, what would happen? But yeah, Walter told us for many years that's the way it is. So, we believed Sacha, but Nick's body of work, The Greatest Show on Earth, is going to prove to be, as your word, Sacha, the seminal piece of work in the truther community for years to come, depicting the truth of the reality of where we're at in 2023.
Very good, very good. Okay, last guest, and a much hallowed one, Dr. Charlie Cropley, a respected naturopathic physician, teacher with 45 years of clinical experience and more than 50,000 patient visits. My God, can you imagine? He continues to practice as a naturopathic doctor, teacher, and has trained hundreds of doctors in his method. He is a thought leader in naturopathic medicine and a pioneer of naturopathic behavioral medicine. Nourish Naturopathic Healing Arts is a virtual naturopathic medical clinic led by Dr. Cropley, and specializing in training individuals, doctors, and holistic practitioners how to heal illness through 4 primary behaviors. Dr. Charlie Cropley, very, very happy to welcome you to Arise Guerrilla News today.
Sacha, so great to be with you. I've been watching your interaction here, and you're doing great work, man. Great work.
Well, thank you. We revere irreverence above all things in this hallowed temple.
Yes. We revere.
Let me ask you, the naturopathic theory of toxemia explains how illness results from the body becoming poisoned, and how the body heals itself through the evolutionarily evolved metabolic process of acute illness. Can we just riff on this subject? Because toxicology is, I think, probably the most pressing existential issue of the day, given that 5 billion people have been had some kind of mRNA installation.
Yes, agreed, very much. So, what concisely, if I may, toxemia is an understanding of how the body, really all our bodies, our body, our mind, our moral body, our emotional bodies, how they respond to poisoning. And the word toxemia means poison in the blood. So if we look at our consumption of poisons just in the manner of the ways that we eat, we can see that the body takes in poisons. And in the intestines, again, the microbiome, which many people are aware of today, ferments, putrefies foods that we take in as well. And the point is that in the intestines, there is a good deal of poison, of toxic matter, metabolic poisons that are produced. These are absorbed, and without going through the different routes of absorption, they're absorbed into the bloodstream. And in the bloodstream is our river of life, which feeds every cell, every organ of the body. And the body is evolutionarily designed to be self-purifying. And so what the body does, and this is the point that is not understood, is that the mechanism for healing itself is getting sick. The sickness is the cure. A good example of this is a headache after poisoning ourselves with alcohol, right? So what happens in the case of acute, short-lived sicknesses is that the body eliminates poisons through 4 routes. Those routes are our respiratory system, our skin, our urinary tract, and our bowels. So when we're sick, we may be eliminating through all of those. We may have a fever through which our body is perspiring, ridding itself of poisons. We may have a burning urination in which the body is eliminating through the urinary tract, a diarrhea, vomiting through the digestive tract, and we may have coughing, sneezing, bronchitis, sinusitis as the body is eliminating mucus and poisons visibly, obviously happening, right? So this is the ancient wisdom of naturopathic medicine. And if we understand the wisdom of the body, then we work with the body to help it to eliminate poisons. This is the work of naturopathic doctors. If we do not understand what is taking place and we assume that these acute symptoms are the enemy, are bad, and that healing consists in suppressing them by whatever means. In the ancient days, bloodletting, mercury, arsenic, so on. Today, chemotherapy, radiation. And if we don't understand that and we suppress them, then where do these poisons go? Right? They stay in the body, they accumulate, and the metabolic effects of them, just like alcohol, accumulate. And what happens is that our system degenerates until we have a diagnosed chronic degenerative disease, diabetes, arthritis, heart disease, cancer, dementias, and so on. And so this then is the model of understanding that if we take the context of COVID, we can see, that we have been completely focused on what we're told is a virus that exists God knows where, right, beyond our senses to perceive. We're scared to death, and we're given this mRNA therapy to take, versus looking to our own selves and say, how am I and how are we as a nation poisoning ourselves? Well, that doesn't take a lot of looking, right? We can look at our systems of agriculture. We can look what we've done to our water, air, and soil. We can look at our systems of medicine, which poison us, and so on. And so the shift is that as a culture, this applies, and the ultimate shift, the absolutely essential shift, is that each individual answer these questions of what is my body telling me about my ways of living, what I eat, how I move, how I rest, how I think, how I relate with other people, and to cease the self-poisoning and to be about the work of purifying ourselves and of healing ourselves. So that, in short, is what the view is that is really conveys an understanding, a demonstrable, evidence-based understanding of the nature of illness, the causes of illness, and then from there, effective therapeutics.
Beautiful. Well, what a beautiful bird's eye view and ground floor view. Thank you. And I love that because it corresponds and dovetails so perfectly with the conversation that we've been having. Before you joined, our first hour on the show today was with Dr. Michael Salla and some very noteworthy iconic figures in the truth and disclosure movement, albeit shocking information connected to extraterrestrials and this great kind of Pentagon engineered narrative right now of disclosure. But what you're talking about as it relates to human behavior impacting essentially our health, being the essential piece, and inviting us to restore and reclaim sovereign jurisdiction over our cells, over our atoms, because it does all issue. The temple is perfect always in all ways. We allow for the defilement and the desecration, and it tiptoes through the back door oftentimes. I mean, most people suffering from any number of grisly medical conditions are invariably, fundamentally, foundationally very good, sweet human beings. And yet, systemically, we can allow the devil in the back door without even knowing about it. Just riff a little bit more on that, if you will, on us taking account of our behavior as the essential piece.
Yes, it's the central piece, Sacha. It's the central piece is, I don't like the term, but self-control. Let us say the power to govern our actions wisely and caringly. That is essential. And what each of us will come down to face in our healing process. So if I'm working with a patient who has cancer, we review their performance of eating, movement, thinking, relating. And in each of these, when we try to gain control over our own actions and cease to do what harms us, and the example of an alcoholic is an excellent one, we find ourselves bound, imprisoned, enslaved. John, I think it's John, says something like, what is this that compels me against my will and better judgment to do what I would not do? Right. What is this? And we, in my own investigation, and it proves so for others, the what is this is us. The cause, if you would, of evil, or better said, the cause of behaviors that harm us and produce sickness is our own self. Now, naturopathic, that sounds, when I recognized that, my only way of dealing with my behaviors was to condemn myself, to criticize myself, to hate myself for them. And you can't make a lot of progress that way, right? That's really limited. The means of changing ourselves becomes the very disease, the self-criticism and hatred. And naturopathic medicine teaches that the foundations of sickness are ignorance, the failure to understand. Indifference, meaning what we understand, I don't really need to quit drinking. It's okay. And then the inability, even when we want to be able to change our actions. This is, and truly, so where's the answer come from? A way of saying it is it comes from God, right? It comes from our nature, our spirit, that wisdom and kindness that lives in each of us. And so we face addiction, and we as a culture, look at us, how sick and addicted we are, right? And to face our addictions is formidable. And again, the only way it can come about is from us as individuals. And as individuals, we begin to study, as we've all done when we wake up, and start looking at this and go, wow, what's going on here, right? And then what we go into ourselves more deeply and find the emotional, the mental, the moral, the relational forces, if you would, that are contributing to our actions. And we embark on this healing journey of being able to free ourselves from this bondage, this slavery to our habits, and to bring about a steady cultivation of habits that are life-giving and healing.
Beautiful. Thank you. Scotty Sachs, you've got the stick.
Well, Charlie, I love the enthusiasm and the vibe you have for what you're doing. Thank you for sharing
Thank you, Scotty. Thank you.
Let me ask you, we've all known somebody very sick, very ill, that we're at the crossroads of deciding a treatment plan, if you will.
Mhm.
What do you say to those that are stuck in the matrix of the Rockefeller-funded medical system that created a lot of this sickness and addiction to begin with?
Mhm.
What can you say to them in a minute or less to get them to consider the naturopathic alternative way? What can you synthesize it into a short statement? What can I say to my uncle or to my friend that's very ill and he's going to do the chemo and the radiation? How do I steer him out of the matrix?
Yeah, I would reply that there are safe, non-harmful, healing actions that you can take for yourself while you're doing this, while you're in the midst of medicine, improving your ways of eating, getting good night's sleep, beginning to go for a walk or work out, and identifying the relationships in which you are being lied to, that are sources of poisoning and conflict to you. These are all things that will unfailingly benefit you. And if you begin there and take a step, you'll be led to more.
So nutrition, exercise, sleep, these are things we control. And I've found when I put that on somebody who's sick, to get them to receive that in a non-defensive way. Or are you telling me I'm sick because I didn't eat right? I didn't exercise? Yeah, I am pretty much telling you that. But yeah. It's a real tough one that I think we've all faced, trying to convince somebody there is a better way.
We can't convince. The first principle is seek first to understand and then to be understood. So especially if you're not in a doctor-patient relationship, if the person is not coming to you saying, I'm lost here, I'm hurting, can you help me? If that's not the case, then the best is that of understanding. And this gift, this power of understanding another is key to all of us who are awakening here and facing these people who are sound asleep, right, and wreaking havoc. And I'm aware of two people. One is a Muslim woman, the other is a black jazz musician, and each of them have videos on YouTube of how they have gone and befriended the people in the Ku Klux Klan and people who were dangerous to black people, dangerous to Muslim women, right? And befriended them through their understanding them. This one woman said to it was one of the high ups in the Ku Klux Klan, and said to him he was going out to lead to go burn crosses or something on people's lawns in the neighborhood. And she said to him, if that was my lawn and you knew that I lived there, would you go set fires on the lawn? He said, no, never. And she said, why not? And he said, because you and I are friends. That's and that's across the board. Also in the I'm forgetting the man's name, who worked with so strongly in exposing the censorship that was taking place to him as a teacher at Portland State University and so on, and came after trying to convince and writing books, right? Trying to convince others that it is this quality of first understanding. When a person feels understand, they start to lay down their arms. So That's the central that I see.
Let me ask you, Charlie, did you ever imagine, and I asked this question of a great many medical experts and scientists. I've interviewed, I think the toll we took was over 200 in the last few short years connected to this great era of COVIDiocy. So for me, it's been a sort of thundering conversation for 3 years. It's a quantum conversation, trying to understand medical science and how we eventuated in the year 2023 into a status quo, which is really predicated on evil. I wouldn't even say bad science. I'd say evil science. The science of Dr. Mengele and worse, and systemic genocide being essentially the cornerstone of the metric defining how the dispensation of health science is rolling out statutorily, how governments grant permissions to the big pharma and agrochemical industry base to proliferate poisons in every single product sold to humanity, and then go on the front foot to outlaw any possibility of real remedy, real science, real healing. That to me is the most insane inversion of logic, of rationale, of reason. We're supposed to come from Descartes and Voltaire. We're supposed to be the age of reason. Couldn't be further from the truth. Let's riff on that subject. How did we get to this status quo with such wicked science, in your view?
I really think that it has always been the case. It's the human dilemma, challenge is the fight, the battle between good and evil, right? And it's always existed within us as individuals and exists within us as societies and nations. So, and Sacha, you're right. At this point, it's global, and we are sick unto death as a nation. The metaphor is that we have cancer.
Yes.
And we all know that nobody knows how to cure cancer. The cancer is like the tuberculosis or the syphilis of our times.
Right.
And that we face something that no individual knows how to heal, and that is going to utterly is destroying us, and we are about to die from it. And so now here we are, this conversation being an expression of it. We're asking, come on, we're not going to find the answers in so-called science. How are we to heal ourselves? And this comes down to us and being able to speak the truth, which is being severely censored, being able to speak the truth, to listen to one another's wisdom, and to heroically live that and bring it forth. This is the challenge of our times. It comes down to me, you, Scotty.
Right. The great reckoning. The great reckoning.
The great reckoning. That's right. We ain't getting past this one.
Sacha, I would suggest the AMA and the MSM have a lot to do with, the indoctrination of our system, right? The AMA was created to proliferate the bullshit that's been thrown upon us for, I don't know, when was the AMA even created? I don't have a clue.
Well, it's a fairly recent institution, but I'll tell you, it's strange that you mentioned the AMA today, because it was only today that I learned that the AMA, the American Medical Association, friends, has now officially downgraded pedophilia from being a disorder to being a preference.
Oh!
I mean, you've got to laugh at this. You really have to. It is hilarious.
Right? They got a bunch of comics in the back room writing script for them? Or?
Yeah, apparently. Well, this is apparently, Charlie, this apparently is how Baphomet or Molochite worshipping Babylonian priests tiptoe into the portals of power, take control of the planetary apparatus. What am I saying? They engineered the apparatus in the first place. But the point being, they've taken it over wholesale and are now desperately installing a software. One imagines in the hopes that they can continue to enthrall humanity into another dragnet of galactic sleep. I don't think that's going to happen somehow, because what I'm seeing with real humans all around, and I've been in 26 countries this year, I'm just seeing a lot of awakening, a lot of affirmation, a lot of upliftment, a lot of beauty. Yeah.
Sacha, were you around in the 60s?
I wasn't around. I'm not quite that old.
Okay, so I'm 77 years old, right?
Right.
So in the 60s, I graduated from high school in 1964. The 60s came like a tsunami. This just waking up and going, whoa, we got the Beatles, we got the Rolling Stones, we got hair growing out, we got weed and LSD. We're the consciousness of stopping the wars, of love being something that each individual chooses for themselves. This just came in. And I'm saying that what's happening right now is the same. It's a much higher consciousness, but the change that you just described, seeing in 26 countries, is like nothing I've ever seen.
Right, indeed, indeed. I mean, I didn't know you were that old. I have to say, you don't look it. You certainly don't sound it. But I don't. I'm just not impressed nowadays by anyone who's like younger than 95. I think when you sort of after the age of 95, I'm kind of impressed. But prior to that, honestly, it's kind of a nothing burger, because the 75-year-old today, my grandparents were old when they hit 60. They're 60, 65. They were all old, wizened, gray, arthritic at that time. And it just seems to me that that's actually testament to what I've just said, that there's a whole new kind of light encoding taking place in this world. There's a new sense of order and even of reality, I think. So I think that we're moving away from that. I'm a hippie in that context, incidentally, understanding, the law of time and, the 2012 thing. But I genuinely believe that it's a psychological thing. This is a personal question I wanted to put to you, because foundationally, I believe that entropy in the cells is directly connected to the way that we ideate reality, thinking that everything is subject to the thrall of time, when actually it's not in the quantum universalist sense. But the worst program in that sense that was ever installed was not democracy, but was the idea of time. When you get into the Babylonian Mysterium cult and the calendric systems and the 1260 time signature, the tick-tock, you're running out of time, baby. You're running out of life force. You're running out of oil and gas. You're running out of water. You're running out of everything. So scarcity economics then prevails over this fictitious notion of time, which was simply an idea, a bad idea, the bad idea at the source code of bad dreaming was the idea of time. We took that on wholesale. The parent corporation, governments, the Vatican complex, all of that witchery emerged as a direct result of this, because we became enslaved, 1066, doomsday, and all of that. We became enslaved to the idea that the church could show us the way. We'd go through the third-party intervention of the Catholic Church, the priests, the confessors. All of that insanity was what snapped the spine of our true connection to the living soil as living sons and daughters of God, as I see it. It's simple language, So I'm suggesting, and I'm asking you as a naturopath, as a great naturopath, the very best, I have to say, don't you imagine that once we relinquish our idea of time, it will help our health inordinately?
I do. I'm in agreement with you. I am impressed with your understanding, Sacha. That was well spoken. Now, what I would like to ask and have a short investigation is, in what way is time not real? How is it? How would we answer practically anybody in the world who, right? How can we demonstrate and know for ourselves that time is not real, that it's a construct?
Indeed. Well, one would have to depart the very linear, very reductive, very polarized and binarized contextual framework that assails or assaults the normal human condition. And we all understand that we are supernatural beings. We're hyperdimensional, multidimensional beings. And yet we're entrapped, entrained into this very kind of limited spectrum of light and of capacitance. So that reductivity of our supernature into being Joe Public and being a wage slave for 70 years and 10, and then falling victim to some cancer, which was frankly programmed into the equation for that demographic. All of that is an insidious picture, but it describes mainstream reality, where we abnegate or abdicate our sovereignty and our divinity and our limitless capacity to expand, create, affirm. That's literally giving away our divine mantle. And then we collapse into the definition that the lower archonic elemental forces will prescribe for us, which is a pretty shitty existence. So I'm suggesting that we can't, my answer to the question, forgive me, is that we cannot answer the question that you asked from a reductive, polarized, binary position. We have to step away from that, fall back into the great unknowing, and sit with ourselves in our highest inner council and ask ourselves what's real and what's not real. Is time real? Look at it, touch it, feel it. No, because you can't touch it, you can't feel it. It's not known to the senses. It becomes only a caged system which is predicated on bad dreaming. So we kind of know a quantum perspective that time doesn't exist, in the same way that quantum mechanics has defined that where the idea moves or the mind moves, the body follows. You know, matter follows thought in that sense. So that's the way I would invite people to consider it, that time and space are a context within which we inhabit a limited spectrum of reality, but our real supernature is not defined by that limited reality. Hope that goes some way to answering the question.
Thank you. Thank you. A sophisticated answer. I'm going to share one with you that has been taught to me, and it is this, that that the future is a concept, right? It's a concept. We can and we can imagine ourselves in a future 10 seconds from now, 10 years from now. And the past is a concept. We can look at the past. It is a concept that appears to us. What is real, that is non-conceptual?
Yes.
And the only thing that is real is this exact moment.
Bravo.
Right?
Bravo.
In this exact moment, I can pay attention to the sights that I'm seeing,
right,
the sounds that I'm hearing, and they're only happening now.
Indeed.
Right? In the mind, boom, I can remember what happened before. That's clearly a memory. What's actually happening is timeless. The present is the only place that we ever exist. We only exist in the future and the past conceptually. And
beautiful.
Only in this moment can we actually choose to experience our own love and our own kindness to ourselves. Right? And in this moment, in fact, we can breathe a breath and feel in our own bodies the goodness of that, the kindness of that. And in the moment when we're eating, we can eat with love. We can choose with love, and so on. So that is, to me, that's the ever-present Lord. The God
indeed,
of truth,
I love what you
Right.
I love what you say, and I couldn't agree more with it. And it does remind me of a great homily, which is that, that you can't escape the matrix. You can only collapse perfectly into its center. There is no escape from the matrix. But if you remain absolutely motionless and disidentified from the pandemonium that the matrix invites you into, you enter that still point. That still point defines the atom seed of coherence. Coherence in the present moment is your umbilical to supersoul, to source. And yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I shall fear no ill. Dr. Cropley, I think you're a wonderful human being, and I'm hoping to grab you by the ankles and drag you onto the Lazarus Symposium in the days ahead. I'm going to ask my team to reach out and keep pestering you until you agree. But I also want to say, as we depart, this is also proof positive, Charlie. Nick Jagger is 80 and Mitch McConnell is 81. So you want your forensic evidence, friends? There you have it. Charlie Cropley, it's been wonderful meeting you, and I thank you so much for joining us on AGN today.
Thank you, Sacha. Thank you for the beautiful work you're doing.
Scotty, last word to you, my brother.
Well, God bless producer Joanne. She really pulls it together. Another great show, Sacha. I mean, intrigued by the extraterrestrial discussion, which I know little about, but I'm always intrigued when I hear particularly those gentlemen that lived through it, and the artifacts you're showing now. Just, it seems undeniable. The whole extraterrestrial subject seems undeniable.
Well, I'll tell you, Scotty. I mean, there I am. This is only 3 days ago, and the artifacts that I was holding, touching, and exploring were just out of this world. It's over 300. Over 300. Yeah.
Yeah, that hat you put on, that explorer hat, was for the artifacts, right? You put that on to hold the artifacts, didn't you?
Well, you got to do your bit, tap the hat toward Indiana Jones,
Yeah, right.
But I'll tell you this much. Those were real. I understand the forensics and the analytics. I've been at this game for almost a quarter of a century. 20 years ago, my foundation, Humanitad, was being used by scientists and also by governments in a couple of occasions. We asked us to get on board with putting together the scientific teams to investigate certain anomalies, including transcendental technologies and so on and so forth. So I have a fair history in this area of OOPAs, out of place artifacts and weird science. But I'll tell you, going into a facility and seeing over 300 alien artifacts in one place, it was beyond enchanting. And what was even more enchanting than the artifacts was meeting with the private collector, the individual who'd assembled them over his lifetime. This is a man who is staying so far out of the limelight, so far away from the purview of government or institutions, somewhat afraid for his life and for, not so much for his life, but for the collection. But what was more remarkable was his story. I mean, it was one thing handling alien mummies and artifacts and skulls and, objects, but his story was what compelled me more. And when he told it to me, it was way beyond Steven Spielberg, Close Encounters, any of the other stories I've heard. I met with Timothy Good, the great military guy who went on to become, he was a military officer who went on to become the greatest researcher of UFO abductions and alien contact stories. I think he investigated over 10,000 of them, wrote seminal books on the subject. I don't know if Timothy's still alive and well. I certainly hope so. But I met him a number of years ago at my office, and he came to visit me. And I got him on board with his body of research, 10,000 cases. And I read the summaries of those many years ago. And I'll tell you, compound all of those together, what this gent that I just met a few days ago has been through since in 49 years. He's now 60 this year. So in 49 years, what he's been through by far eclipses all of the stories I've ever heard. And I asked him, I mean, frankly, tearfully, I pleaded with him. I said, I want to tell your story. Why don't you tell your story? And he said it's not in the telling of the story. He said the net of the story is these artifacts, is the fact that I've been, in a sense, graced or blessed and protected sufficiently to have assembled this incredible collection. Can you imagine, Scotty, if you had one little alien finger mummified, or a skull, or a meteorite with some alien, a petroglyph carved on it? That would be the pride of place. That would be a lifetime's, collection. 300 plus.
300. He's well advised to stay submerged, because the black SUVs would pull up in a heartbeat to confiscate it, right?
Well, indeed. He called me after we met and said that actually something akin to a man in black did appear later in the day and did make some menacing noises. And taking that conversation further with the guy, I don't want to speak in public about it, except to say that he's not alone, that there are a great many folks like him out there, first contactees. Danny Henderson was alluding to that earlier. She's a great icon in this field. This is going to now become the real subject matter. Oh, and let me just turn cannon momentarily onto the trolls, the naysayers, and the I don't know. I don't want to get into insulting elements of my own networks, but I received a lot of shitty, reductive, stupid, sardonic, mean-spirited comments on social media when I simply put up these images, because this is my precursor to where I am going to be taking this subject matter. I'm getting on airplanes, going and sitting down, meeting with these forensic experts, meeting with the custodians of many of these artifacts, because I deem it important, and also because the Lazarus Symposium and now the Arise Network deem it important. Disclosure: I don't want to be subject to whatever bullshit the fucking NSA and the Vatican dream up on this disclosure subject. I don't want to be drip-fed or spoon-fed their bullshit. I think there's a whole lot more to what's going on. And I think that we have a duty of care to lean into the subject and to bring as much of it into the public domain as possible. Anyway, that ends my rant. Scotty, I'm looking forward to seeing you within a few short weeks. You've been promising me an awful long time now.
First week in November. First week in November.
First week in November is ideal. Very good. I'm going to be, end of next week or the week after, I'll be in the Mediterranean, I'll be in the desert, and I will be going to the cradle of civilization, Göbekli Tepe, and other archaeological sites to do some filming. I'll be on the ground there. Our next broadcast will be in 2 weeks from today, folks. Scotty Sachs, thank you again, brother. And to this audience, have to say, big audience, very big audience. It's a huge room. We may as well be standing in a small stadium right now talking to a lot of enlightened people. We're very blessed. Thank you for joining us, folks, and we'll see you in a fortnight from today. Over and out. Joanne, thank you.